I think some of you may remember Fire Warrior, that clunky PS2 shooter where you sprint through levels, blasting everything from lowly guardsmen all the way up to greater demons. Sounds kinda familiar, right? But no, this isn't MALUM CAEDO. This time, we're talking about Shas'La Tau Kais, a humble fire warrior who absolutely refuses to behave like a standard Tau should. He starts the story as the lowest rank in the fire caste, and somehow ends it having butchered his way through Astra Militarum regiments, loyalists, and Chaos Space Marines, and eventually a greater demon. And to make things even crazier, this is his first combat deployment.
Huh?
Now sure, you could chalk that up to video game logic, except Fire Warrior also received a novelization that attempts to explain how Kais survives and accomplishes all of this. Which leaves us with a very fun question. If we actually take Kais's feats seriously, both from the game and the novel, where does he scale in Warhammer 40K? Is he flirting with Chapter Master level, or is this pulse rifle wielding commie quietly creeping into Primarch tier nonsense the same way MALUM CAEDO did? Oh boy, oh no. Yes sir, we are doing this again. In today's video, we're breaking down who Kais is, what absurd feats he pulls off in the book and the game Fire Warrior, and where he realistically lands in the wider 40k power hierarchy. You lads know what time it is. Let's jump straight into the go hole. It's time to power scale. As always, let's start by diving into Fire Warrior and introducing who Shas'La Tau Kais really is. The story of Fire Warrior takes place over 24 Terran hours, following Shas'La Tau Kais on his first mission, rescuing the Tau Ethereal, Kovash, from the corrupt Imperial Planetary Governor, Malok Severus on the desert world of Dolmar 4. Kais infiltrates Severus's prison fortress and escapes with Kovash, but as their Tau dropship docks with a cruiser, they are ambushed by an Imperial battleship and Space Marine boarding pods. Kais fights desperately to defend the ship, but is ultimately knocked unconscious by the Ultramarines captain, Ardias. In a stroke of good fortune though, Ardias brokers a temporary truce between the Imperium and the Tau when it's revealed that Severus, the planetary governor, has fallen to chaos, and is being manipulated by the Lord of Change, Tarhak. Returning to the planet, Kais infiltrates a chaos-corrupted Titan and destroys it, and then ultimately confronts Governor Severus, slaying both the possessed ruler and the greater demon controlling him, surviving encounters that are absurd for a first-time Fire Warrior. In the end, Kovash dies, Dolmar 4 is exterminatus, and in the novel's darker conclusion, Kais is left suffering from severe PTSD and ends up in a mental hospital for his heroics.
Look, Pim, I know it's our job to help this guy and everything, but I think this guy's a lost cause. He's obviously made up his mind. Why don't we just cut our losses and get out of here?
Oh, come on. That's nonsense, Charlie. We've never given up on the job so far.
Now, I have seen a lot of talk on if this game and the novel are canon or not. Officially, Games Workshop treats almost everything under their license, whether that's a codex, novel, or a video game, as canon, even if not everything is quote-unquote true. Some fans argue that Fire Warrior isn't canon because of how many enemies Kais defeats, but the way I see it, if MALUM CAEDO is acceptable, there's no reason to dismiss Kais. Plus, the Fire Warrior novelization is still sold by Black Library, meaning GW recognizes it as a valid story. So by their rules, Kais's feats can be taken seriously.
Approved!
With that said, the novelization adds something the game doesn't: context.
Ah, that's hot. That's hot.
The book delves into Tau philosophy, showing how Kais's perspective contrasts with other characters, and offering us insights into how a Fire Warrior can take on entire regiments of Astra Militarum, Space Marines, and even a greater demon. As at one point, Kais screams, "Blood for the Blood God."
Blood for the Blood God! Blood for the Blood God! Blood for the Blood God!
a clear sign that Khorne is amplifying him, giving Case the power needed to defeat these high-tier enemies. Most notably, the novel differs from the game in the final confrontation. In the book, the Greater Demon is ultimately defeated by Ultramarines Captain Ardias and a Tau Crisis battlesuit team, where in the game, Case handles it alone. The novel simply makes Case's actions feel more grounded and plausible within the 40K universe. All in all, I'm going to consider what this Fire Warrior does canon in my Gao brain. And now it's time to talk about this Blue Kami's insane abilities and his arsenal. Before we jump into Case, we need to talk about how powerful a Fire Warrior actually is. According to the 8th edition Tau Codex, the Firecast are professional warriors. In some way, their training regimen begins moments after their birth, for the Great Communes are fully given over to raising the best soldiers and nothing else. So right off the bat, we know Case is a highly trained soldier from birth, and that since he holds the rank of Shas'La, he has completed the rigorous basic training regimen of the Firecast, making him a fully qualified frontline warrior. But now we need to ask, how do the Tau compare to humans physically? Since we know beings like Space Marines or Custodians are obviously stronger than a simple Tau. And the answer is a bit contradictory. According to Liber Xenologists, they're shorter and less powerful than an average human, so as a result, they eschew close combat, preferring to attack their enemies from a distance using highly accurate plasma and projectile weapons. So that's one in-universe perspective. But then you have the Deathwatch Core Rulebook, which says the Firecast are the most numerous and strongest of the Tau, as broad as humans, but standing slightly shorter. Taking the middle ground between these two sources, we can conclude that Fire Warriors generally have been roughly equivalent to Astra Militarum Guardsmen physically. So in practical terms, they're about as capable as any trained soldier, maybe slightly above average, depending on how you rate the average guardsman of the 42nd millennium. But remember folks, Case is on his first mission, so he shouldn't have any real experience at all. Wow.
First time.
And like I discussed earlier, according to the novelization, Case is also empowered by Khorne, which means we need to discuss what a Khorne amp is. Khorne amps can vary in terms of power, but we can gather a baseline from the rulebook Black Crusade, which states that warriors favored by the Blood God can become immensely powerful, sometimes channeling a portion of his essence into their weapons, manifesting aspects of his fearsome visage, or even becoming a literal Hand of Khorne, an avatar of slaughter capable of cutting down enemies on a massive scale. Of course, in typical 40k fashion, we don't know exactly how amped Case was, but he was definitely physically enhanced and may have had some psychic resistance to the warp, which would explain how a first-time Fire Warrior was able to defeat a Lord of Change at the end of the game. Now let's discuss his armor. For the duration of the game, Case uses simple Tau combat armor, which according to the 6th edition Tau Codex, combat armor is the standard armor worn by Tau Fire Warriors on the battlefield. Constructed in 2 layers, the outer face is hard and ultra-dense, nanocrystalline metal veneer bound to an inner layer of high-performance thermoset molecular polythene. So yes folks, it's just standard armor, much like MALUM CAEDO. Nothing fancy, just your typical protective gear for a frontline soldier, which makes Case's feats even more ridiculous. Then we get to his weapons. Throughout Fire Warrior, Case wields an impressive arsenal of mostly Tau and Imperial weapons with a few Chaos ones thrown in. You can only carry 2 guns at a time, and one quirk of the game is that at least one of those weapons must always be a Tau weapon. Case's arsenal includes a pulse rifle, the standard starting weapon, comparable to a las gun. It's slow firing and accurate, but good for short-range fights. Next is the pulse carbine, faster firing than the pulse rifle, but slightly less accurate. It comes with an underslug grenade launcher, giving it excellent utility and crowd control potential. Strong for close to mid-range combat, where mobility and splash damage matter. After that is the burst cannon. a high rate of fire Tau weapon with a massive magazine. It has incredible damage per second up close, but poor accuracy and ammo consumption makes it unreliable at long range. Essentially, it's a bullet hose. After that is the last gun and last pistol. Standard Imperial firearms, individually weaker than Tau pulse weapons, but a decent rate of fire makes them serviceable in the early game. Then we have the shotgun. Devastating at a close range, but extremely ineffective at a distance. It's a situational but powerful tool. Following that is the auto gun, a common Imperial ballistic weapon. It has a high rate of fire with moderate stopping power. It's effective for sustained mid-range engagements and chipping down tougher enemies. Then we have the sniper rifle, a long-range precision weapon with excellent accuracy. Headshots will eliminate most standard enemies in a single hit, making it extremely effective in early to mid-game engagements. It does have a limited magazine, but it's very reliable. After that is the rail rifle, a superior long-range weapon with higher damage and better penetration than the sniper rifle. It's extremely effective in late-game encounters, and it's capable of dropping heavily armored targets with well-placed shots. Then we have the bolt gun, a Space Marine explosive weapon firing high damage semi-automatic rounds. It's extremely effective against elite enemies, though the recoil can affect follow-up accuracy. After that is the Chaos bolt gun. Yes, Case uses chaos-empowered weapons in this game. It's functionally similar to the standard bolt gun, but with a larger magazine. It retains the same explosive punch and stagger potential, making it highly effective in sustained fights. Holy shit, Case has a lot of guns in this game. After that is the plasma gun, a heavy plasma weapon with devastating damage output. Its charged secondary fire can pierce multiple enemies in a line, making it a great weapon against grouped or heavily armored targets. It's slow firing, but brutally effective. And last but not least, we have the missile launcher, a single shot, extremely high damage weapon with a long reload time. It's great against vehicles, heavy infantry, and bosses. It does have limited ammo, but each shot hits like a truck. In addition, Case carries grenades for explosive effect and a Tau bonding knife for close combat. While all of these weapons are effective, nothing here is truly legendary or flashy, certainly nothing on the level of the sword Drachnia, the layer blade, or dare I say the infamous poop blade that stabbed Horus in the butt. The exact weapons Case employs throughout the campaign ultimately depend on the player, allowing for wildly different playstyles, from long-range domination to full-on smackdown rampages. So now let's dive into the insane feats Case pulls off throughout Fire Warrior and why they are completely off the charts compared to what you expect from any other Fire Warrior in the 40K galaxy. Before we jump into these crazy feats, we need to separate Case into two distinct interpretations, the version from the game and the version from the novelization. They both follow the same broad chain of events, but the scale, tone, and power portrayal are drastically different. One version is effectively a one-man army carving through an entire fortress without slowing down. The other is a traumatized but brilliant survivor, barely holding himself together while fighting forces far beyond what any normal Tau should be able to survive. In the game, Case's body count is staggering. He kills 363 Imperial Guardsmen and 101 Stormtroopers, mowing through these trained soldiers of the Armageddon Steel Legion as if they were target dummies. I mean, honestly, look at this, they kinda are. He also downs a Valkyrie gunship, defeats 11 Loyalist Raptor Space Marines, and then goes on to slaughter 72 Chaos Marines and 26 Chaos Raptors. On top of that, he kills 12 Chaos Sorcerers, 6 Chaos Obliterators, 2 Chaos Dreadnoughts, 4 Demon Princes. He defeats a mutated Admiral who is turned into a Chaos Spawn, executes the corrupted Governor, Severus, and in one of the most absurd feats I've seen in my cow life, infiltrates and sabotages a Warlord Titan by precisely targeting its plasma reactor. And finally, at the end of the game, he defeats the Greater Demon, the Lord of Change, Tar-Hak. Case's confirmed kill count for the game is 642. But the novel version is far more grounded, but I still have to admit is quite extraordinary. In the book, Kais kills 85 Imperial Guardsmen, 12 Stormtroopers, and 4 Servitors. And quite different from the game are his encounters with Space Marines. The first time he encounters a Raptor Marine, he nearly dies, having to resort to luck and desperation to defeat it. Over time, he manages to kill 3 Loyalist Astartes, including an unhelmeted Librarian. But these victories require distractions, scavenged plasma weaponry, environmental advantages, and like I said, desperation by Kais. He also famously tricks a schizophrenic Chaos Dreadnought into walking off a ledge rather than destroying it in single combat. But when he is amped by Khorne, he kills roughly a dozen Chaos Marines, as well as Chaos Raptors, 1 Chaos Sorcerer, and 2 Chaos Obliterators. So as you can see, it's still quite impressive that this blue commie was able to do this. Like the game, the novel also includes the Warlord Titan infiltration, as Kais fights through its interior, navigates its armored corridors, and disables it by targeting its plasma reactor. The true divergence between the novel and the game is the final confrontation with the greater demon, Tarhak. In the novel, the encounter is more of a psychological descent into pure warp horror. Kais is plunged into the pit of chaos, a warped arena where reality fractures and he faces manifestations tied to all 4 chaos gods. Waves of nightmarish entities push and test his mind and soul. When Tarhak manifests by tearing its way out of Malok Severus's body, it's described as an iridescent, constantly shifting nightmare whose very presence assaults Kais's thoughts with visions of Tau extinction. Kais is nearly paralyzed by the demon's psychic pressure, but he survives by retreating inward, exploiting his trauma, and embracing the cold, detached logic of the Fire Caste. By hollowing himself emotionally, he denies the demon leverage. He does not truly destroy Tarhak, he endures it. And the cost is severe. Afterwards, he is found rocking back and forth, muttering the names of his fallen fire team like a mantra. It is a hollow victory that leaves him psychologically shattered. When we compare the two directly, the game version racks up 642 confirmed kills, including a greater demon, while the novel version accounts for only 126. I know, right? Only 126 kills. This guy's a loser. With the greater demon survival feat rather than a true demon kill. So although both versions follow the same plot, they are inherently different, which means we need to evaluate them separately. On one hand, we have the grounded novel version, a traumatized survivor with a Khorne buff, and on the other hand, we have a far more arcadey, near MALUM CAEDO manifestation of Kais. This means that as we enter the scaling section of this video, we will be comparing both versions to the wider 40K universe. Alright folks, it's time to roll out everyone's favorite Chaos Power Pyramid. And this time around, just like with MALUM CAEDO, we'll be using 5 tiers. First, we have Chapter Master. This is the upper ceiling of mortal Space Marines, Orc War Bosses, and Tau Commanders. Here you find warriors that can lead campaigns, duel powerful foes, and occasionally slay powerful demons under the right conditions. After that is the Enhanced tier. This tier includes warriors who go beyond standard Astartes limitations through gene craft, psychic specialization, or extreme augmentation. This includes beings like the Grey Knights, the Custodes, and in most cases, Demon Princes. Of course, that depends on the favor that Demon Prince has at that specific moment. But across my research into 40K power scaling, most Demon Princes fall into this tier. Next is the Low Primarch tier. This includes the weaker base Primarchs, or those capable of fighting greater demons with extreme difficulty or high stakes. That means the unaltered base Primarchs like Omegon, Lorgar, Guilliman, and Alfarius, or avatars of Cain and greater demons. After that is the High Primarch tier. This is the pinnacle of the strongest warriors within the Primarch spectrum. These are figures that can no diff name greater demons and are proven fighters against other Primarchs like Sanguinius, the Lion, Horst Lubercal, Conrad Kurz, or Lehman Russ. Yes, we recently just re-ranked the Dropside Massacre Primarchs, and let me just say, Conrad Kurz is up there because he is upscaled by one thing: his fights with the GOAT, the Lion. And finally, we come to our last tier, Beyond Primarch. These are beings whose power exceeds even Primarchs individually, like Catan Shards or the Demon Primarchs. And no, I did not include the planetary, cosmic, or multiversal tiers, because there is no way in hell this blue dude can destroy multiple planets or realities. Let's not glaze him too much, herd. Now before we jump into both versions of Case, let's discuss where he should realistically scale. Since Case is just a simple fire warrior with no combat experience, I feel like realistically he should scale at the back of the Chapter Master tier. If this book and video game weren't about him, he would be getting killed the first second he stepped on the battlefield. But Fire Warrior is not realistic. So now let's talk about both versions, starting with the grounded one first. In the novel, Case's greatest feats include killing 85 Imperial Guardsmen, 12 Stormtroopers, and multiple servitors. He also infiltrates and disables Warlord-class Titan by sabotaging its plasma reactor. But his best showing comes from his cornfield rampage. At his peak rage state, he massacres Chaos Space Marines in a blur of violence. Case gritted his teeth and squeezed the trigger over and over again, punching gore holes through black and red armor, boring glow edge craters into demon flesh, lancing black blood wounds with perfect, silent, recoilless efficiency. And later, before his confrontation with the greater demon, he feels himself swelling with power. The killing rage in his mind chuckled and whispered its congratulatory poison. You can kill anything. You are a god. So not only is Case able to kill multiple Chaos Space Marines within moments, but he also feels like a god with this amp. That does not necessarily mean that he is a god, because that wouldn't make any sense, but it's clear that this cornfield rage is enhancing him physically and maybe mentally. His ability to take down Chaos Space Marines and Raptors with this much of ease puts him on a level with, dare I say, Adeptus Custodes. And I know some of you might point your finger at me and laugh, but yes, I'm going to directly compare Case to the Adeptus Custodes. The golden, oiled up boys who move in blurs and carve through Astartes like wheat. If this state represents Case at his absolute peak, then his cornfield rampage arguably elevates him to the very front of the enhanced tier. Now the real question is, does he reach Primarch tier? And in my humble cow opinion, he does not. Due to one fact, he does not defeat a greater demon in straight up combat. In the novel, he simply survives, but he does not overpower Tarhak. Since defeating a greater demon is one of the few feats that gatekeeps the low Primarch tier, and because Case, at least in the novel, does not cross that threshold, we can't move him in to the low Primarch tier. His Core Knight rampage, where he slays multiple Chaos Space Marines, a Raptor, a Sorcerer, and Chaos Obliterators, definitely puts him at the top of the enhanced tier, as his feats are similar to what a Custodes, a Grey Knight, or even a Demon Prince could do, but definitely does not move him up into the Primarch tier. Now let's move on to the game version. Here, Case is something else entirely. Across the game, Case kills 363 Imperial Guardsmen, 101 Stormtroopers, 44 Servitors, 11 Loyalist Space Marines, 72 Chaos Marines, 26 Chaos Raptors, 12 Chaos Sorcerers, 6 Obliterators, 2 Dreadnoughts, 4 Demon Princes, the Mutated Admiral, Governor Severus, and finally the Lord of Change, Tarhak himself, for a total of 642 confirmed kills. And don't you guys forget it, he also infiltrates and disables a Warhound Titan. Now, just like the greater demons in the MALUM CAEDO video, the one Case defeats, Tarhak, he is named, but he has absolutely no feats. However, even lesser known greater demons are still fragments of the Chaos Gods themselves, and according to Deathwatch, Mark of the Xenos, Lords of Change are the greatest sorcerers in the galaxy, and their mastery of magic is without peer. The mightiest psychic powers employed by feeble human psychers are idle cantrips to a Lord of Change. With the merest flick of an elegantly tapered claw, bodies mutate and writhe, buildings twist and melt, and Case still manages to banish one. That feat and defeating a multitude of enemies truly pushes him into the low Primarch tier. But does he go beyond that? I'd argue no. Tarhak may be a named Lord of Change, but his full combat feats aren't extensively documented. We do know he was previously sealed during the 31st millennia by Eldar Farseers on Dalmar 4, using a powerful psychic incantation known as the Song Weave, trapping him and his wordbearer followers within an abandoned webway section. That context does suggest that he is powerful, but does not necessarily mean he is among the strongest named greater demons, who can put up a fight against Primarchs like Skarbrand or Kabanda. So Game Case reaches low Primarch tier, but likely stops there. He does defeat 4 demon princes, but yet again, they are unnamed. And even his other feats, like defeating a large quantity of Chaos Marines, Sorcerers, Dreadnoughts, or Raptors, are impressive, yes, but I still think other Primarchs like Lorgar, Guilliman, or Alfarius and Omegon would be able to do this, and potentially Avatars of Cain as well. My final verdict is he probably lands near the middle to the top of the low Primarch tier, but definitely not over any of the base Primarchs found in this tier. So to summarize, Novel Case is at the front end of the enhanced tier due to his corn buff state, while Game Case clears the Greater Demon benchmark, and so, due to the rest of his feats, sits in the low Primarch tier. 2 versions, 2 very different ceilings. Same Fire Warrior. And now, let's talk about if Case breaks Warhammer 40K power scaling. Case is truly a fascinating case when it comes to 40k power scaling, because he performs quite well in both the novel and the game, but context matters a lot. In the novel, his feats, taking down dozens of Marines, slaughtering guardsmen, and even decimating a few Chaos Raptors, can be justified through his training, cunning, and clear corn buff. These moments make him powerful, but they stay grounded. He still can't defeat a greater demon. His strength is situational, boosted by desperation and warp influence, rather than inherent god tier abilities, which is completely different from what we see in the video game. In the video game, Case just absolutely dominates everything like he's channeling MALUM CAEDO. While still technically just a fire warrior on his first campaign with conventional equipment, he moves like a one-man army. It's over the top in a way that doesn't quite fit 40k's normal power scaling, especially since a named greater demon like Tarhak should be nearly untouchable by a rookie fire warrior. That said, his feats pale in comparison to video game characters like MALUM CAEDO, who's able to solo 8 greater demons throughout his campaign. In that sense, I feel like Game Case is still a little bit broken, but is contained enough that we can still appreciate it as video game logic meets lore. And so my final verdict is that Case may have an over-exaggerated list of feats, but in my cow brain, they are plausible, especially with a corn buff. Or maybe even a prayer from the greater good God. I mean, hell, Marneus Galgar defeated in Avatar of Cain a Swarm Lord twice, a greater demon, and a demon prince. So it's not that far-fetched that Mr. Case here can do all of this. All in all, I think Case is a watered-down version of MALUM CAEDO, whose feats are simply insane. If you haven't watched my MALUM CAEDO video, go check it out here. Wow, another crazy video game character. Once again, I would love to do this in the future with Titus or any other 40k character you guys can think of. Huge thanks to my Patreon and YouTube members, Dinkleberry, Omar, Lag, Musty Lawyer, Seth Capizilla, Musty, Keydree, and Caleb White. Thank you guys for the continued support. You all mean a lot to me. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next ridiculous power scaling adventure. Stay milked, fellas, and I'll see you all in the next video.